In many ways, I have a very different, and some might even say strange, kind of life. For starters, I don't live in a populated urban area. I live in an off-grid tiny house in the forest, and then I don't have an actual job, as such. Yet I still feel that I have a lot of economic freedom in my life. How is that so? This is what I'll talk about in this video. In fact, I will share with you the main strategies that made it possible for me to quit the rat race in the city and go live with greater economic freedom in my tiny house. But first I will share a little story with you about how I even got to this point. Back in 2020, I quit my otherwise very secure job in the city. I had just moved into my newly built tiny house, and the dream was now to live a more sustainable life. That meant less stress, being outside in nature, and having the time on my hands to do the things that I was really passionate about. At the time, I thought I was going to work as a part-time consultant for a green NGO somewhere. The low cost of living in a tiny house was to replace the need for a high salary and give me more free time on my hands. However, things did not turn out the way that I hoped for. Getting a new job was not so easy. Corona lockdowns meant that more people were actually getting fired than hired at the time. After some time with no luck, I started to doubt myself a little bit. Was it even possible what I was trying to achieve? And then I decided to apply for some full-time jobs that were almost the same as the one that I escaped from. Luckily, I did not get these positions. In fact, in one job interview, the employer asked me if I was even sure that this was something that I truly wanted. So I reminded myself that nothing good comes easy, and that I shouldn't give up on myself and my dream without having tried my best. Even though the difficulties of learning how to live in an off-grid tiny house during winter was beginning to take a bit of a toll on me. But I had to move forward and earn an income somehow, so during Corona lockdown I started making online presentations about tiny living and building. That gave me just enough income to survive for the first year and a half. After the lockdown, I was able to also come out and do some physical presentations, but the income was still pretty sporadic. Also, I got the opportunity to do some tiny house building courses over the next couple of years. I even found the time to write and publish a book in Danish about tiny living. But I still felt that I was scrambling somewhat for money and that I was all over the map thinking of ways to earn enough for me to feel financially free and relaxed in this lifestyle. Today, however, I don't have these concerns and worries anymore, and I still live in the very same off-grid tiny house. So I was just saving the fire because it was burning out a little bit. So it's always interesting when you cook in the outdoors, because you really need to be aware of the fire that is not burning out, because you don't have this reliable source of heat that you are used to when you're cooking indoors. But anyways, enough talk about food. I wanted to talk about these 3 strategies for living a life with economic freedom when you live tiny, like I do. And I thought that I wanted to start with the most important strategy, because one of the biggest reasons really for why I wanted to live in a tiny house was that I wanted to live a life where I didn't have to spend that much money in order for me to survive, because that would free up a lot of time in my life to do like more stuff like this, being outside in nature and being creative or productive, doing whatever it is that I'm doing today out here in the forest. Oh my god, the smoke. Yeah, so it was a bad placement of the camera, but let's see if we can manage. So my first and most important strategy, I would say, is the strategy of living with low costs. because obviously that is what you are able to do when you live in a tiny house, because you don't have a big mortgage. So I can live in this house virtually for, I don't know, not that much money, maybe about $750 a month, I think, is my budget. But sometimes I can live on less than that, but it's not much compared to Danish living standards. So my strategy really is to live in this house that is super cheap, because it's off-grid, so I don't pay any money for heating, I don't pay money for water, I don't pay money for electricity, because it is virtually for free for me. And then the house in and of itself, it's very cheap to live in. So that is definitely something that buys me a lot of time to live the life that I really want to live. However, my I would not say my concern, but the thing that I need to be aware right now is to not take on any debt, because that is what you are expected to do in this society. It is to take on debt so that you can help the banks produce more money and make the economy grow and grow. And debt and the accumulation of money is really at the center of that. So that's a dynamic that we are told that we need to play into. But at the same time, I think it's a dynamic that makes a lot of people burned out and exhausted and sick. Not to talk about the planet, really, because the planet cannot take us producing more and more stuff. We are way beyond the point of no return, I think, and also for like just the severity of how much we're damaging the planet with all the new stuff that we constantly produce and produce and produce just to keep that growth going. And it is not sustainable, it's not natural, it's something that we made up. So I think that a very important strategy, not only for the planet, but of course for you to have a more relaxed and free life, is to not take on debt and not have this low cost living, really, where you can live as cheaply as possible. And I think it is much more interesting to see how we can find ways of living and dwelling and working where we can free ourselves from all that debt and all that enslavement, really. And I know it sounds maybe a little bit naive, but at the same time, I only have one life to live, and I want to live it in the best way possible. So not taking on debt and living with low costs is definitely my number one strategy in life right now. To my great joy, I just realized that I have this small piece of sausage left that I will roast and use as a topping. So I might as well use that and maybe give this fella something. Oops. So the second strategy that I wanted to talk about is something that I called having a diversified income. And that is maybe just a fancy way of saying that you should, I think, have money coming in from more than one place, having like different revenue streams, because you can be very vulnerable if you only have money coming in from one place. Like a lot of people learned that the hard way during Corona, because there were so many layoffs all over the world, because businesses were going down all over. So people were suddenly very vulnerable, and then it's hard to take care of yourself if your one and only source of income is suddenly drying out because you are getting fired from somewhere. And so my strategy has been to build up kind of like a system where I have at least 3 types of income that I can always rely on. Types of income that I have more or less control over. And the one is like doing presentations all around the country about tiny living, which is something that I do a lot. And I have built up kind of like that, I guess you could say, a little bit of a reputation for being the guy who does the tiny house talks in Denmark. So it is something that I'm getting hired for on a continuous basis, and it is a pretty stable income for me, and I'm pretty happy about that because it pays well, and I also really enjoy coming out and talking with people and meeting people out in the real world and feeling their passions about tiny living, because there are so many people who really want to know how they can do it themselves. And then the other type of income is actually from YouTube, because as of this year, actually as of this spring, I got monetized, and this summer I got my first payout from YouTube. And now it has gotten to a point where I feel that it is a pretty stable income, and it's a nice supplement to my other income. So now I'm feeling pretty secure, and actually right now I feel like this is kind of like my job. Even though it doesn't look like much like a job, but I actually feel that this is work for me, and some kind of work that I really enjoy, because I'm living like the way that I've always dreamed about, and I'm still earning money on it. So it's kind of like a dream job, but I would not rest in this situation the same way as I do right now if it wasn't because I also know that I have money coming in from my presentations. And then thirdly, actually, I also earn money on renting out my annex, because I've been renting out my annex for the last year, since I built it last year, and it has become very popular on Airbnb. So it is also something that I can dial up a little bit more if I want, because I earned the title of superhost 3 times now. So it means that I'm getting pushed out a lot on Airbnb, which means that I'm having, it is somewhat of a reliable income for me as well, if I want it to be so. So these are 3 very important types of income that I can use or dial up and down, depending on how much I need them. But if times are really dire and all of these 3 types of income are drying up, I can always do what I did in the past, like making Zoom presentations about tiny living, or maybe taking a part-time job somewhere. So I feel a bit more secure economically right now, because I know that I can always earn money from at least 1 or 2 places. And that gives me a lot of freedom, I think. So now time has come to mash these poor potatoes with this instrument. I don't know what it is. I actually found this in some kind of antique store and thought it would be totally perfect for this, making potato leek soup like this, even though it's a little bit rustic, but I like it like that. I just added a little bit of cream, just a leftover that I had, and now some butter to make it all smooth and round in its taste, and then the crumbles on top of it. Oh, maybe I should get some green stuff from the garden. So, I think we're slowly getting there. It just needs to be a little more dry, or not so wet. And then the chips actually managed to turn into something that resembles chips somewhat. They're at least a little bit crisp. So they will be a nice add-on. But that gives me a little time to talk about my 3rd strategy. Because something that I also learned, I think, along my way, was the importance of having... Whoa! Splashy stuff, was the importance of having something you could call assets, like things of value that you build up and that you can turn into some kind of monetary value at a later point. So it gives you some security, but also some happiness, because it should be some assets that you really enjoy building up, because otherwise it would make not too much sense, I guess. So one asset that I have been building, I think right from the get-go when I started on this tiny house journey, was that I wanted to build kind of like a brand around me coming out as a speaker talking about tiny living in Denmark, and now also on YouTube. But in the beginning it was just presentations, and I really wanted to have a brand about me doing that, because then I knew that if I built that brand up, then I would have an easier time earning money on this thing that I really love, namely talk about tiny living and be sharing it with other people, and also be having a dialogue with other people. I really enjoy this sense that something is growing, something new is emerging, and people are slowly catching on to new ways of living and being in the world. And I really like to be in that space in a way. So I knew that this was an asset, the brand, that I really wanted to build, and I've done so for like 4 years now, because I've been out and talking in so many areas of the country, and every time a journalist wanted to make an interview, I have always said yes, and every time a school group wanted to make a project, I've always said yes to do the interview, just to build my brand in a way and get out there. And then another asset that I have been building, I guess, is this YouTube channel, because it was just a very small platform until just recently. Then I turned this into English, and then the channel started growing, fortunately. And YouTube is also something that I really enjoy doing, and it is something that I enjoy seeing grow. I learned also the hard way just recently, I cannot be taking things too much for granted. I cannot rest on my laurels, because like I made these 2 videos about me and Bosimart going to Norway and hiking, and like in terms of gaining an income, that was a horrible decision to make, because it just turned my channel totally around. So it was going up in terms of income, and now suddenly it went down because people did not want to see me hiking in Norway and visiting these off-grid cabins. That was totally for sure. So it just started this negative spiral in terms of me earning money on YouTube. So I'm still on that downwards spiral. So I hope it turns at some point. But my YouTube channel is still an asset that is growing in terms of membership. So that is some comfort, at least. But it goes up and down, and you cannot be too complacent, I guess. So that is one of my learnings, but it's still an asset that I love putting energy into and love seeing grow, and that I also survive on because of it, because of the income. And then a third asset that I'm building is actually here on this property, because I will pretty soon, as some of you might already have heard, will be building a new tiny house on this property. And actually I will be turning this entire property much more into something of a self-sufficient homestead, like be using much more land for food production, and combining the house with the garden in intricate ways, like harvesting rainwater from the house and sending it out into the garden, and creating all kinds of systems with the permaculture principles. So anyways, that is a project that I am about to take on right now, and it will enhance the value of the property. So in that way I'm also like building an asset about something that I love, but that is also something that I can get some money out of if I need so in the future. Hopefully not, because I'm not planning on selling, but it's just nice to know that I have an economic backup, because the house that I have right now, it is not like legally placed on the property, so it's not adding to the value of the property. It's just a mobile home placed on my property. It's not doing anything good for me, but by me building a real house, so to speak, then my property value will be a bit higher. And that is just very good to know. I think that the things that you put your energy into is something that will grow and make your life easier in the long run. Anyways, I think this is almost ready, so now it's time for dinner. So that was it for now. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and see you again next time.